Hey there, everyone. Ryan Schul here. Welcome to my channel. So, in the topic today, I want to talk about the actual true cost of buying a house. So, when somebody sees a house listed for whatever it is, $500,000, $1 million, 2 million, 250K, right? That's the cost of buying the house. But there's several other costs associated with. Sometimes they're hidden costs, but they're really exposed at the end. They're not necessarily exposed at the beginning, because obviously that makes the true cost of the house a little bit more than what the advertised cost is, right? But you still have to pay these costs. There's really no way around it. There's no loophole. There's no option that you can avoid, right? It's not negotiable. You have to pay these costs, right? So with a house, you'll have the closing costs, things like property taxes, insurance, maintenance, HOA fees, right? Home ownership fees, mortgage interest, inspection fees, utilities, setup, things like this, right? So it just gives you better flexibility and your ability to plan and budget more appropriately when you have all this information at your fingertips, right? You can make a more intelligent, more informed decision and understand what it really, really, really costs for you to get into this house, right? When you make smart decisions, you can actually have more negotiating power, right? And you can actually say to the seller, look, there's ancillary costs here. Can you come down on the price of the house, maybe 2%, maybe 3%, something like that? You can negotiate things, right? When you have leverage like that, right? And you have to understand the total cost of ownership is really greater than what is advertised for the actual house. I can virtually guarantee that, right? So I put together a script that is going to help us make these decisions and make it the appropriate determinations. So we have the purchase price of the house. This is the main cost, right? There's things like closing costs, property tax percent, home inspection, loan origination fees, title insurance fees, moving fees, homeowners insurance, legal fees, and maintenance reserve, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run this script and just input some information into these prompts when I'm prompted for this. So the purchase price of the home, I'm going to say is $500,000. So 500,000, enter. Okay, what is the closing cost percent? So a common closing cost is around 3%. Yours could be 2%. You have to collect this information and put this into the model so the model can create a report for you. And the more accurate the inputs, the more accurate the output, right? So the report will be very accurate if your inputs are correct. So enter annual property taxes, about 1 to 2% of the cost of the property. I'll do 1.5, okay? I live in New York, so there's high taxes here. Enter the home inspection fee. I'm going to do the default. It's about $500. Enter loan origination fee as a percent of the purchase price. 1% is probably pretty accurate. And enter title insurance fee. It's going to be probably about 1,000. I'll do 200 just to be conservative here, right? I'm going to overestimate. Enter estimated moving costs, 3,000. So my wife and son and I just moved recently. I think we paid 2,000, but we just moved literally one block away from where we lived before, but again, it's New York City, so everything's expensive. Enter annual homeowners insurance, $1,200 is the baseline here, and that's pretty accurate. That's about what I pay. Enter legal fees, saying 1,500 is the norm, and I'll put 1,500 in here. Estimated percent, maintenance reserve as a percent of the total cost. I'll say 1%. We put in $500,000, 1% would be 5,000, right? Hit enter. So we have the original purchase price, closing cost, property tax, so on and so forth, right? So, you know what, I will go ahead, I'll do this one more time. Instead of getting just ahead, I'll get all of those. So, okay, so we have a nice breakdown now. Now we can go ahead and plot this, Control Enter to plot, and we can see what this looks like. Okay, so $500,000, clearly that is the brunt of the total cost of doing this transaction here, but there's other costs too associated with this, right? Closing costs, property tax, loan origination fee. So let's take all of these costs and look at a percent of the total of everything. So we're going to sum up everything and see what the total breakdown is. Okay, Control Enter. So we know the total amount is $500,000. This is about 92.78% of the cost of the house. But there's other costs associated with this house, right? So if I copy and put this into Excel, I suppose I can do everything in Python. Let me just open up Excel and look at this. So there's about 70.78. There's about 7% above and beyond the $500,000, right? So 7 times 5 is 35, probably about $35,000 in addition to the $500,000 closing costs, right? So I don't know about you, but for me, 35,000 is somewhat significant. That's kind of substantial. So I want to know about that up front, because if I saved up a $500,000 for the house, maybe there's a little buffer, $500,000 and 10,000, so 510,000 for the house. I still wouldn't even be able to afford to buy this house, right? Because this closing costs are kind of a nuisance here, and it's costing a little bit more than I expected. So let me put this over here, and what's that thing doing there? And shrink this down a little bit. Not that much, okay? Okay, more. Okay, so here's the cost of the house, but in addition, put some formatting on there. In addition, we have another 3,600, 3,800, 8,900. Wow. So if I go over here, 538. So we have 38,900 above and beyond what we paid, or 38,000 divided by that, right? So it's about 8% higher than the actual cost of the house. So all the closing costs and everything, all the ancillary costs, everything all in, combined, all inclusive, is 8% more than the total cost of the house, right? So if you look at the house and you say it's a $500,000, that's great, but there's other costs associated with closing for that property that you really need to be aware of, or else you're gonna be caught off guard, and that is gonna be a nasty surprise. Let's look at one more example. 1 million. Closing costs, I'll do 3%. I think that's pretty standard. Okay, annual property tax, 1%. It's probably higher, but I'll just go with 1. Home inspection fee, let me say $750. Loan origination percent as a percent of the loan amount. Enter title insurance. So I'll do 1,000. I think that's pretty accurate. Moving costs, I'll do 3,000. Homeowners default. Homeowners insurance. And legal fees, I'll do 1. I know the lawyer that could do this, and he has a pretty good rate. Maintenance reserve, 1%. Okay, so here's the total breakdown. Purchase price, 1 million. Closing costs, 3,000, so on and so forth. Let's look at the plot over here. So here's the 1 million. Closing costs, 30,000, 10,000, 10, 10, 10. Okay, and then let's look at the breakdown again down here. So amount is 1 million, percent of total, 93.73. That's pretty similar to what we saw before. Let me plug it in here. Okay. So in this case, the closing costs above and beyond what we paid for the house is an extra $66,000. So it's pretty substantial. So guys, this is something that you really have to be aware of and acknowledge that the closing costs on the house could be a substantial amount relative to the cost of the house. So in this case, it's 7%. And I could probably put that a little bit better, -1. So it's a 7% to get into the house above and beyond what the closing, what the house is advertised at. So with this knowledge, you can say, look, I've done my due diligence. I have finished my homework here. It's going to cost me $166,950. You can say to the seller, would you be willing somehow to come down 7% on the cost of your house so I can purchase this thing? All in, all inclusive, with all the closing costs associated with this, because this is not negotiable. I cannot get out of this. Would you be willing to come down 7% so I can get into the house for 1 million clean, and you are done, right? All in, all the extra expenses for 1 million, if that's your grand total, maybe you can save 7% and you can actually pay 1 million to turn that key and to get into your brand new house rather than paying $1,066,950. Okay, so that's what I want to show you. Just all the extra costs associated with purchasing a house. It's not just the cost of the house. There's a lot of other associated charges that go with that. So that's it. Hopefully that was insightful and informative. I want to drop that knowledge on you guys. I came across this years ago when I bought my first condo. Eventually, after a couple of years, moved into the second, then moved into the third, which is the current place where my wife and I live. So every time it wasn't a surprise because I did my due diligence ahead of time and I knew what I was getting into. If you don't do that, you're in for a rude awakening, my friends. I guarantee that, okay? But with this information, when you're armed with this kind of insight, you can make more informed decisions and go to the seller and say, hey, is there some wiggle room here? Can you come down a little bit? Because I really want to pay close to 1 million, not 1,066,000, okay? So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for your time, guys. And I will post all this code when I post a video later today. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.